Welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening. I invite you to share where you are on the planet. We are a global community, so please take a moment to let us know where you're dialing in from tonight. There is a poll and a chat button. I'm going to launch the poll, and we'd love for you to participate. It's a little bit of fun trivia to warm us up, and we will get to the answer this evening. The beauty of tonight's event is the ability to connect with people worldwide. So please feel free to comment and ask questions in the chat as well. I'll do my best to get to as many as possible. Hopefully we're all settled into our Zoom chairs for the evening. And I want to first say I'm Julie Kaminsky. I am the founder of the Walking Book Club. The Walking Book Club is a global community that moves while listening to audiobooks to engage the mind and the body. Tonight's event, a Heart and Soul Book Chat, pairs authors with humanitarian causes. If you can, we ask that you support these events by donating directly or through the Heart and Soul program, such as the Walking Book Club e-magazine. Proceeds from the Walking Book Club e-magazine are donated to a charity that supports women, children, or the environment. Tonight's beneficiary is Blink Now. This is to say that I like to say the Walking Book Club is good for mind, body, heart, and soul. And without further ado, I am thrilled to welcome back tonight's guest, Sadeqa Johnson, author of, and I bet she's so thrilled with this new title, New York Times best-selling novelist of the House of Eve. We were lucky enough to host Sadeqa for The Yellow Wife, which is one of my favorite historical fiction novels. And if you haven't read that as well, I encourage you to pick that up next. Tonight, she is back with us to chat about her latest hit. Welcome back, Sadeqa.
Hello, Julie. Thank you so much for having me again. This is a pleasure.
It's so nice.
Hi, everyone.
And I must say, you are radiant with the new title of New York Times best-selling author.
Every time I hear that, I have to do a little dance.
Well, as you should. And I'm going to throw it in as many times as possible this evening because it is so well deserved. And I am thrilled for you, which I kind of want to start with right there. And I have so many questions for you tonight. So let's get right into it. When we first met you for The Yellow Wife, you shared how hard you worked to get your first book to market, Love in a Carry-On Bag. Fast forward, The House of Eve is Reese Witherspoon's Sunshine, a pick for Reese Witherspoon's Sunshine Book Club, and you are a New York Times best-selling author. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you tell us what it was like to get the call about being selected as a Sunshine Book Club pick?
Yeah, well, it happens well in advance. So it was about end of September, early October that my editor called and said, "Hey, can you pop on a Zoom?" And I was like, "Oh man, I look crazy today. I have on this beat up t-shirt and my hair is all over my head, but whatever. Okay, I'll jump on." And I jump on the Zoom and she has, my editor, my agent, people from publicity, people from sales and marketing all on this call. And she just says, "We just wanted to tell you that your book has been selected by Reese's Book Club for the House of Eve." She said the only caveat is they want to move the book from a March pub to a February pub because it was originally March 7th. And I thought, that's no caveat for me. We can move it any which way she wants. And so it was just an amazing experience and a secret that was really difficult to keep for all of those months.
Were you able to tell your family?
Just my husband, only my husband.
So as a mother of three, you weren't allowed to run around the house and tell your kids, guess what?
Oh, no. And
I,
my kids can't hold water, so everyone in the state of Virginia at their high schools would have known. So that was a good secret.
oh, well, I give you kudos and credit for not, you know, I would just want to share it with my kids as well. You only your husband. Wow. And that's a long time to hold a secret like that.
It yeah, really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. So not
Really
only
is.
are you a great author, you're a great secret keeper too.
Apparently.
um, I am fascinated by how writers get inspiration for their story. And when you met with us for The Yellow Wife, you shared how the story of the Yellow Wife came on a family outing on the slave trail in Richmond. For those of you who might not know, and I think this is fascinating too, can you share how the House of Eve came into being for you?
Yeah, the House of Eve sort of was inspired by thoughts of my own family. My grandmother told me that she was the black sheep of our family. She got pregnant with my mom at 14 and had her at 15. And this was the early 1950s. And so good girls did not do that bad thing. So there was a lot of shame and a lot of secrecy surrounding this incident for her. My mom told me that she didn't know my grandmother was her mother until she was in the third grade. Up until that point, it was never openly discussed. She lived with her own grandmother, and she even called her mother Miss Yvonne. So she had no idea or no connection at all. And it really got me wondering about mothers and daughters and shame and secrets. And I started wondering what life would be like for my grandmother. What other options did she had when she found herself pregnant in the 1950s? And so most of my stories sort of start with a what if. What if things were different? How would that look? And that was the beginning and the inspiration for the House of Eve.
As part of the Walking Book Club, I put out a magazine, and it includes audiobook extras in it. And historical fiction books, and your books in particular, are great for content that enriches the listener's experience. I also do a lot of research for these calls, and I kind of go down a research rabbit hole of the interviews. And I was fascinated with your answers to many of the questions. So long-winded way of getting to, you shared how you connect with your characters and how they talk to you. And I was fascinated by that. Can you maybe expand for our members tonight how your characters direct you?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because right now I'm thinking about another novel, and it sort of starts with like daydreaming. So like now I find myself sort of like as I'm falling asleep, I'm sort of like kind of like daydreaming, thinking, seeing scenes play out in my head, characters sort of whispering to me. For the House of Eve, one thing specifically that happened was the story was largely Ruby's story. So I discovered Ruby. I was thinking about my grandmother, and so that character was sort of based on those things that I knew about. But I wasn't quite sure how I was going to put the whole story together. Well, one day I was in my office, and I felt this presence sort of come over me, and it was strong. It was defiant. It was aggressive. It was desperate. And I kept hearing the voice of, I need your help. I need to have a baby. And that was the way Eleanor sort of came. And I thought, ooh, where did you come from? Because this story was just supposed to be Ruby's, but it was so quick and fast. And her story started to unravel for me so quickly that it was almost like overwhelming, because it was like, okay, even if I'm going to write you, give me a sec, because I'm sort of like trying to figure Ruby out right now, but it was like just really fast and furious. And so I often feel like the conduit, like the stories, the characters sort of choose you, and you only have a certain amount of time to say yes to it. Because if not, you'll go to the bookstore and you'll find, your idea with another author's name on the cover, and you'll be like, darn it, I had that idea first. So yeah.
I think that's fascinating. And I'd love to hear about exactly how they came to you. There's one member we have a couple of blossoming writers in the group, and I hope they're on tonight because I think your writing process is fascinating. But she talks about how her novel sits in the corner and talks to her. So I was like, wow, not only do novelists talk, the characters talk, and they come to you in different ways. With that being said, Karen Schrock, if you had a great question that I think if you can pull yourself off mute right away would be fun for you to ask, because I think it's a great question. So Karen, if you could bring yourself off mute and go ahead with your question, that would be terrific.
Well, Sadeqa, you just sort of answered part of my question already about your writing process. But I guess I was wondering, like, do you sit down every day at a certain time to write? Do you do chapter by chapter? Do you fill in outlines and then write the chapter? And then I was also curious about your research, like how much time you research an idea.
Yeah, for my writing, I'm not really writing right now. I'm just thinking. So I go through a period of where I'm sort of thinking about things. And so that's where I am. But I know it's almost time for me to write. So I'm sort of getting my mind right and let my characters know, like, I'm coming. I was just on book tour. I need a sec. Let me get my thoughts together. But I am coming, right? And so once I start, what I'll do is I'll open my journal and I'll sort of like kind of coax them out of the corner, like, hey, Sophia, how are you? What's been going on? I asked them in my journal, like, what have you been doing? Like, what is it that you want me to know? How do you feel about this? So it's sort of like I'm kind of pulling them out so that we could start kind of being in communication again. And, in the beginning, I'll make myself write 2 hours a day. That just something kind of like not too aggressive, but just enough where I'm not frustrated, but where I can get some things done. And then I'll gradually add on as I build my muscles, like going to the gym. So you don't go to the gym and work out for 5 hours. I go for 30 minutes, right? And then after 30 minutes, it's like, oh, I could do 45 minutes, So it's the same sort of thing with writing. As far as research, I usually do the bulk of my research up front before I start writing, because for me, the research informs the plot. Like, I know the characters, I know the story that I want to write, but then through the research, I start finding all those little beautiful Christmas ornaments that I can hang on the tree and sort of pull and decorate and make it kind of make the story make sense. And then as I'm writing the story, then I'll pause sometimes to go back and research something. So for instance, I'm writing about the 1950s in the House of Eve, right? And so Ruby's getting dressed to go to do the grocery shopping for her aunt. Well, what did she wear in the 1950s? So then I might stop at that point and Google, like, well, what did 16-year-old girls wear? Bobby socks, Oxford shoes, that sort of thing. And then I'll fold that in and I'll keep writing. So that's sort of kind of like, so as I'm writing, I'm sort of doing quick little bouts of research as I'm writing, but I've done the bulk of it up front.
Thanks for the question, Karen. I appreciate that. I have to tell you, one of the research rabbit holes I went down in the book extras was the music of the book. And put together a playlist of the artists that you included. And when I listened to it, I was like, wow, that's really good music. So I wanted to give you a virtual high five for including that aspect.
Oh, thank you.
In your process of research, is there anything that, and it's kind of, I guess, an ambiguous or maybe a lighter or question, when you're doing your research, is there anything that you gravitate towards or that you like more than others, or do you have a process of when you're researching, what makes you go down a rabbit hole?
I do. It's mostly, well, for the House of Eve, it was mostly reading. It wasn't as intense as when I was writing Yellow Wife. That one was like going to plantations and I needed to sort of get out there. But with the House of Eve, it was mostly reading. So a matter of going to the library, Googling, poking around in my own family history, asking my mom and my dad questions, asking my great aunt questions to get a sense of what that time period felt like. But it mostly is reading either novels that took place in the 50s, just so that I can get the sense of the language of the way people spoke during that time, textbooks of things that happened. I didn't understand the connection between Black and Jewish people in North Philadelphia. So I found a book, which I reference at the end of the novel, that sort of talks about that relationship. And I was able to pull from some of the names of the stores and the way the street was, the way the stores on the street was situated, and who interacted and when they shopped and that sort of thing. So mostly reading for this book, I would say.
You referenced your Christmas tree process. Could you expand upon that? Because I think that is, I love that analogy.
Yeah, usually, oftentimes when I'm working on the novel, it often feels like I have all these little ideas. Like I know, Ruby's 15, and I know she lives in North Philadelphia, and I know Eleanor is from Ohio and she comes to Howard, and I know that I want to write about this Black elite family in DC, and I know I want to write about the library. And so I see him as having all these beautiful little Christmas tree ornaments, but the hard part is figuring out what the tree is, so that I could string everything sort of on to make it make sense. It's like fitting the pieces of a puzzle together.
So and I'm kind of jumping ahead here with this analogy of the Christmas tree and the ornaments. How are your ornaments coming along for the next book?
They are right now just ornaments. No tree.
No tree.
No tree yet. No tree yet. But it's okay. It's normal for this process. I started outlining it before I went on tour, but I didn't finish the outline. So that's sort of where I need to get back to. So I thought the story opened with one character, and now I'm thinking it opens with another character. And so it's sort of just spending time with them. I'm in the getting to know you phase. So we have to spend time together in order for me to figure out which way to go.
Well, we certainly don't want to rush the creative process, but we're excited about whatever tree is evolving next. I want to go back to, I have two questions kind of to build upon your responses. You mentioned that this book, you went to your family, and I did see in the interview with Jennifer Weiner that it looked like you had some relatives in the audience, because didn't they address you as Auntie? And
yes.
And you referenced, you're talking with your mom and your dad. How's how does your family feel now? Is it opened up discussion? And the women of your family?
Yeah, I think we were already opening up discussion. I think we were already sort of getting to the place where we're a little bit comfortable talking about things. So, I don't know that my mom has read my book. I've been asking her. So I know she's like, I'm going to read a chapter a day. But she's not like knee deep in it to the point where we're having like deep discussions about it. My sisters read it, and they just think it's a great novel. I just love reading your books. I can't believe my sister wrote it. That really is the kind of conversations we're having around the novel.
Mm-hmm. And then going back to, you had referenced that this is the next Christmas tree ornament is there, but you were on book tour. And having talked with authors now for the last couple of years, I've so come to appreciate how much goes into bringing a book to publication, to market, above and beyond the writing, rewriting, editing. The pre-press and the covers and pre-promotion and promotion and interviews. And you are now on tour for a New York Times best-selling book. So two questions. How do you feel, because I think you had said it was 6 weeks. So coming to the end of it, and do you have a favorite part of the process?
Yeah. So I am feeling a little better. Sunday was sort of my last big heavy lift for a couple of weeks. So yesterday I slept like almost all day, which is not like me. So it was my body was like, oh yeah, slow down. As you can see, my voice is not all the way 100%, and I don't feel sick. I think it's just from talking so much. I would say my favorite part of the tour has been just the human interaction. My last little leg was Atlanta, New Orleans, and Northern Virginia. And in New Orleans, I got to meet with Dr. Joe Biden, which was really wonderful, really wonderful. And just very lucky on my part that she was in New Orleans at the same time as the book festival. Happened to be a Tulane mom. I think one of her kids graduated from Tulane and decided to just come to the panel that I was speaking at. It was not for me, but I just got lucky. So that was pretty awesome. I would say meeting Joe Biden was probably the highlight of the tour. Definitely the highlight of the tour.
That's amazing. My daughter is a senior at Tulane, and the book festival looked amazing. And I saw on the Tulane website that Dr. Jill Biden was there, and I saw you too. It looked like it was a great event. So kudos to you. Speaking of colleges, in one of your interviews, I think it was with the HBC interview, you had referenced that your daughter was in the process of selecting.
She is still in the process, Julie. We are still waiting for a decision.
Still, because it's that time frame now where kids. I mean, I've had to put. We're my youngest is at Tulane, but putting getting 3 to that point is I thought maybe you would have that decision by now.
I wish I could give you good news, but we are still considering.
Okay, well, we all have to. Will you let us know?
I will, absolutely. I will definitely post it all over my social because I will be glad to be like, all right, babe, see you later.
And she's your middle, right?
She's my middle. Yeah. So I'll have one more at home.
Yeah. Yep. So before we get to kind of the closing, I wanted to see if there's an opportunity or offer the opportunity if anybody had any questions or comments for Sadeqa, just chat it in, and if we can get to it, we will. Jennifer Holmes says, I love the clothing description. That was so well done. Karen Green says, amazing novel. Okay, so I have a question for you just out of curiosity, and it kind of stems from watching the interview with Jennifer. If you were to take, let's say, 3 of your favorite author to lunch, who would it be? And now
such a tough question.
And a little bit more about you, and where would you go?
Okay. So I feel like I probably would pick authors who have passed on because I'm very curious about Zora Neale Hurston. I always wanted to meet Maya Angelou. So I would say I would definitely pick those 2. And then, maybe I would mix it up a little bit with a Deepak Chopra, throw a Deepak Chopra in there just to give it a nice little balance. And I would say we would definitely have to meet somewhere on the beach, maybe Kiawah Island in North Carolina, something like that.
Really? I like the mix of the group. That I would say Kiawah is a little. I wasn't expecting that. So
well, I've never been, and I was just researching beaches in North Carolina. So that's the first one that popped into my head. So it would be, I've never been. I know it's a little expensive. So I'm thinking somebody else is footing the bill for us to get together. So let me just go ahead and up the ante.
Well, I am going to put it out there. We are transitioning to Charleston, and I love Charleston. It's close to Kiawah. Anytime you want to come down, I'll take you for lunch.
All right. Okay. I love that.
Okay. So in the spirit of writing, what advice would you give blossoming writers? Oh, and by the way, this is a backup question because I was gonna tell people to look out for your next offer, but I want to make sure, because now that you're a New York Times bestselling author, you were teaching classes.
Yes, I teach. Right now, I'm teaching a course called The Year of the Novel with my co-teacher, Julie Cantrell. And that's through a company called Story Summit. And if there are any budding writers on the call, they have plenty of classes. That class is full. It's from January to December. So we're not accepting any new students because it's March. But they do have other classes that you can take. And it's storysummit.com. philanthropic.org, maybe. And they have a Facebook page and all of that. I also teach at Drexel University in the MFA program. I taught last fall, I taught a course called Dialogue. So, yeah.
Well, I would imagine you're going to have quite a waiting list to get into any future courses. So congratulations on that too. I know when I get your emails, I do pass them on to the people in the community that are interested in writing and are pursuing more formal writing adventures. All right, so I just wanted to check this poll here. It's kind of fun. It's like the informal 2 truths and a lie. I asked, which one is false? Sadeqa grew up in Washington, D.C. Sadeqa wanted to be in theater and acting. Sadeqa is the author of 5 novels, and Sadeqa worked in public relations with J.K. Rowling. So which one was false? It was pretty much even. I don't know if you can see this now. I'm going to let Sadeqa know to share with us which one is false.
I did not grow up in DC. I actually grew up in Philadelphia, just like Ruby.
Yep. Yeah. It was kind of a trick question because you had so many good things or so many things that were fun to share. So yes, 5 novels. And if you haven't already read Yellow Wife, I loved it. It was a story that you told with heart and compassion. And so if you have not already listened and moved to that, the narrator for Yellow Wife is amazing, Robin Miles. Yeah. So put that on your list if you haven't already. Once you finish the best-selling novel, The House of Eve. I love that. So yeah, yes, I thought part of, that you're coming into this success and having, you really had to be gritty because you start, if you can, just expand upon your work way on, and that you did work with J.K. Rowling.
Yes. When I was right out of college, I was a theater major in college for the first half, and then I switched to communications. So when I graduated from school, I was looking for a job, and I thought, oh, I love books. Might as well go ahead and take a job in publishing. So my first job out of college was at Scholastic Books as a junior publicist. And within, I think, the first year or so, J.K. Rowling's the first Harry Potter came out, and my boss was her publicist. And so I had really close proximities to her. I got to travel with J.K. Rowling and spend time with her and really get to know her. And it was a really special time.
One of the things that I appreciated about your discussion with Jennifer is, to hear the grittiness of both you and she, in that you didn't just land in this in a best-selling title. She had said she had 25 rejections, and you said you had many rejections. And I know Alka Joshi, it took her 10 years to bring The Hannah Artist to publication, and J.K. Rowling. So I guess I just didn't, if the audience didn't know, maybe, your path from, can you share with them where you started with your first book?
Yeah. So I was working in publishing, and I would write. I lived in New Jersey and worked in New York City. So I'm an honorary Jersey girl for all of those people who put in the chat that they were from Jersey. I lived in Edison. I lived in Montclair. I lived in Hillside. I lived in Springfield. So I used to live in Edison, New Jersey, and I was taking the train into the city every day for work. And so I would handwrite my story on the way to New York City. Then I would close my office every day at 4:00, and then I would type it into the computer and then print it and then write on my train ride back. So that was sort of my beginning. And my husband and I, we got married and was having our first child. And I decided that I had enough connections in the publishing industry that I could quit my job. And no worries, honey, I'm going to land a book deal lightning fast, and I'll be a New York Times bestseller lickety split. And so I quit my job. I had my son and could not get a publishing deal. I had an agent. She took it to market. I had 11 rejections. Every single editor she sent it to told us no. And she suggested that we wait 6 months and then try it again. But at that point, I have been tugging that book around for about 10 years. And so my husband suggested that we put everything that I learned working in publishing to good use and start a small press and get my book out. And that's what we did. And so we literally went up and down the East Coast. Every book festival we could find, we bought a table. We had books in our trunk, and we hand sold them to everyone. And that was sort of the beginning for me. From there, Love in a Carry-On Bag won the Phyllis Wheatley Award. And my editor, who I hired to help me with the edits for Love in a Carry-On Bag, then became my agent. And it was after that that she was able to get me a traditional publishing deal for my second and third novel.
And now you are a New York Times bestselling author. I have kind of going full circle with questions where we started from the beginning. I'm just came off mute there.
I think Renee had a question in the chat.
Yes. Renee, would you like to bring yourself off mute and ask that? And while Renee is asking, I have a question that we're going to ask Sadeqa, but as Renee and Sadeqa are asking as Renee's asking the question, and coming kind of full circle. So we all know that when Reese Witherspoon picks up a book for her club, it's often adapted for the screen. So if this is for everybody, who would you cast in the roles for the characters at the House of Eve? And everybody chime in if you envision somebody, and then we'll get to the answers. We'll get to the answers after Renee asks her question. So Renee, if you can bring yourself off mute, you are, and go ahead and ask your question.
Well, while I was reading this wonderful book, I found out that an acquaintance of mine was actually in a birth home, a teen birth home, when we were in high school. I had no idea. And her daughter just found her in the past month. And it could not have been better timed to find that out. And so I just wondered, did you talk to any, because this was in the 80s, so after abortion was legal, and her family sent her there to have this child and give up for adoption. And it was an emotional time for her, but finding her daughter has been a amazing change in her life. But I didn't know if you had spoken to individuals or just did research about those type of homes.
Yeah, I did not speak to any individuals who were in the homes, but there's a book called The Girls Who Went Away by Ann Fessler. And she was very gracious. She interviewed over 100 women for her book. And so from that, I was able to sort of get an idea of what it was like for some of these girls, but I didn't talk to any of them individually.
All right. Thanks for the question, Renee. Very much appreciated. A great question. Okay. Finally, somebody chiming in for casting. Kerry Washington as Eleanor's mother-in-law.
Ooh, like that one.
What do you think, Sadeqa?
I have no idea. I really hate to disappoint you all because the characters are just the characters in my head. And so when it's time to think about who they would be in Hollywood is very difficult for me. So I always say I leave it to the book clubs because their imaginations are always so much better than mine.
I heard a couple of in the interviews, somebody mentioned Queen Latifah for the aunt.
Oh yes.
So,
yes, I did hear that.
So now we have another. Oh, one of the girls from King Richard would be wonderful as Ruby. That was a great movie, and those the young actresses were wonderful in that. I like that one, Renee. Good one, and good one, Jennifer. All right. Well, these evenings go so fast. But I have one or two final questions for you, Sadeqa.
Okay.
the Walking Book Club is the idea for Heart and Soul Book Chats is to pair authors with causes that support women, children, or the environment. In that spirit, I would love for you to share with the attendees tonight what you hope the takeaway is for readers or listeners of the House of Eve.
Well, I always hope the takeaway is that we come from strong, ambitious women, and that education is the heart of everything that we need to do in order to take it up a notch and take it to the next level. And so I'm always thinking about people always reach back for me. And so who can I then reach back? How can I pay it backward, and how can I pay it forward? And so that really is the takeaway for me.
I love that you had said about honoring women, and that whole remembering. I really appreciate it, and so thank you for that. One final question: what are your non-negotiables to take care of yourself? Healthy body, happy mind. What are your non-negotiables?
My non-negotiables, goodness gracious, I probably need to up that list a little bit because it's not too much on it. But I do feel that I have to work out in some capacity. So if it's weightlifting or hiking or yoga, I need to move my body. I definitely have to move my body. And trying to eat as well as possible. I would say those are the two things for certain. I try and get a bath in there where I can, and a massage here and there,
And what are you going to do? Do you have any plans in place to kind of refuel your spirit, mind, body?
I'm working on that right now. I'm like, Sadeqa, you haven't treated yourself. You haven't celebrated yourself, because I've been so busy. And so now that I'm coming down just a little bit, I'm like, oh, maybe I should take myself to the spa. Like I'm still working on it. I have not figured it out, but it is definitely something that I need to do.
And where can people connect with you if they'd like to connect with you?
You can go to Sadeqa.net. My husband is my web designer. So he's so excited that he was able to just make it Sadeqa.net, sort of like Oprah, as opposed to Sadeqa Johnson. So now you can go to Sadeqa.net and find me. If you are on Instagram or Twitter, I'm at Sadeqa Says, and you can find me on Facebook at Sadeqa Johnson.
Great. Any final, where would you like to vacation? That's a good question, Kathy.
Yes, anywhere with a good beach. I mean, a nice, good, warm beach with a breeze and no mosquitoes.
Well, we wish that for you in your future. I will be following up with links, and Sadeqa was kind enough to let us record this. So once I kind of get all my I's dotted and T's crossed and uploaded and downloaded and edited, I will repost it. As always, please let your friends know about the Walking Book Club, the Heart and Soul programs. I like to say that we are good for the mind, body, heart, and soul. Again, these chats, the proceeds go back to charity. The charity this quarter is Blink Now, which maybe you were with us when Maggie was here. It's a wonderful school, women's education. It's a flagship for creating a community for health, children learning, women education, job training, and that is her organization. Our next one, which you might appreciate as well, Sadeqa, is Room to Read, which supports global literacy for children worldwide, and we have 3 authors lined up for that. But I want to thank you, Sadeqa, for joining us tonight. Thank the members, and if you are joining us for the first time, thanks for checking in. Again, we really appreciate it, especially coming off 6 weeks of a I'm sure, long, fun, exciting, but also working promotion. We wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you.
Can't see
Thank you.
Wait till what's next.
Me too. I can't wait either.
Somebody just gave you a virtual smooch, and we're giving virtual high fives. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, Sadeqa. We'll catch up next time, I hope. Good night, everyone.
Good night.